At 7:12 a.m., bus number 47 left the depot in Pine Hollow. It was a worn yellow Bluebird model, driven by Harold Milesa Man, known for his punctuality and unwavering calm. He had driven that same rural route for nearly 20 years, ferrying children from the outer farms through the winding forest roads toward Windham County School. That morning, 18 students climbed aboard, children from ages 7 to 15, brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors. They carried backpacks heavy with books, lunch pails wrapped in scarves, boots caked in slush. Among them was Julia West, age 12, who insisted on bringing her new cassette player, volume turned low, one earbud shared with her best friend, Claire. At the small depot, a mechanic named Victor Dobbins noted the time Harold departed and marked it in the daily log. Routine. The route was simple: 12 miles through forested hills and snow-covered fields, crossing Route 16 and winding down to the school at the edge of town. The storm worsened as the bus made its way. At 7:37 a.m., it stopped briefly at Dunham's General Store, of the last outposts before the dense woodland stretch. There, Harold waved to the clerk, took a thermos of coffee, and continued on. Surveillance cameras captured the bus pulling out onto Route 16. That was the last known sighting. When the bus failed to arrive by 8:15, teachers at Windham County School began making calls. Parents assumed delays were caused by weather. It wasn't uncommon. But by 8:45, concern gave way to alarm. The route was too short for such a delay, and no other drivers reported seeing bus 47 along the road. At 9:10 a.m., the school contacted local authorities. By 10 a.m., search parties were mobilized. By noon, Route 16 and its surrounding areas had been swept by police cruisers and snowplows. There were no signs of an accident, no tire tracks leading off the road, no shattered glass, no broken guardrails. It was as if the bus, the driver, and 18 children had been swallowed whole by the storm. The days that followed were marked by a grim, relentless search. The blizzard subsided by the afternoon of the 12th of January, but what it left behind was a landscape of white oblivion. Snowdrifts rose 5 feet high in some places. The forest trails were buried, the riverbanks frozen hard as steel. By dawn on the 13th of January, Windham County became the focus of a statewide emergency. Helicopters flew low over the forest, their searchlights slicing through the cold gray dawn. Ground crews on snowshoes combed the roadside woods. Volunteers arrived from neighboring towns, their faces taut with determination and dread. The search stretched across 40 square miles. Every ravine, creek, and bridge along the known route was examined. Divers plunged into half-frozen waters where the river narrowed near Killdeer Crossing. Specialized tracking dogs were brought in, their handlers guiding them through the underbrush and snow. But there was nothing. No bus, no debris, no tire tracks, no footprints. It was as if bus 47 had been erased, not lost, but deliberately hidden from the world. The media descended quickly. By the 15th of January, news crews from Burlington, Boston, even New York had arrived. Vermont's vanishing bus, one headline called it. 18 children gone without a trace. Inside their homes, the families waited. Radios murmured in the background. Phones rang unanswered. Parents stared through frosted windows, willing headlights to appear, where none came. Julia West's brother, Nick, 16 at the time, watched the snow falling outside their kitchen and thought of his sister's favorite song, now trapped on a silent cassette somewhere far from home. Rumors swirled. Some whispered about an uncharted detour, others of mechanical failure. But none could explain the absolute lack of evidence. The bus was a large vehicle hard to miss, even in dense forest. Roads had been plowed by late morning. Someone, somewhere, should have seen something. By the end of the first week, the tone of the search shifted. Hope began to fade. Officials spoke of rescue less and recovery more. Behind closed doors, some admitted what no one wanted to say aloud. They no longer expected to find survivors. By the 20th of January, after 8 fruitless days, the official search was suspended. But for the families and for Nick West, the silence was only beginning. As February crept in, so did a weary acceptance across Windham County. The bus had not been found. Neither had the children. With each passing day, the headlines shrank, cameras packed away, and the volunteers returned to their routines. The families remained suspended in grief. 17 households shadowed by an absence too large to name. Some left the porch light on each night. Others kept the children's bedrooms untouched, toys arranged as they had been that last morning. Nick West grew restless. At 16, he drifted through school days in a daze, unable to reconcile the cold logic of the investigators with the warm, living memory of his sister Julia. He replayed every morning in his head the rushed breakfast, Julia's muffled laughter, the way she adjusted her scarf before grabbing her cassette player. Theories abounded. State police speculated a river accident, but without debris or bodies, the theory collapsed. Others blamed faulty records, suggesting Harold had deviated from the route. Yet the man had been meticulous all his life. And there was the bus's last known location to clear video of it, leaving Dunham's General Store, turning onto Route 16. From there, nothing. In March, a private investigator hired by a group of parents conducted an independent sweep. He focused on the old Forest Service roads that ran parallel to Route 16, some now overgrown, others accessible only by snowmobiles. No signs, no clues. By April, exhaustion claimed even the most steadfast. Life demanded attention. Fields needed planting. Bills required paying. The town, once unified in search, fragmented under the weight of the unknown. Nick, however, would not let go. Each weekend, he scoured public records and old maps, tracing paths where a bus might have vanished. He borrowed his uncle's snowmobile, venturing into the woods alone. Sometimes he'd stop, shut off the engine, and listen just in case, for a sound, for a voice. There was nothing but wind and the slow creak of ancient trees. In June, a memorial service was held in the town square. 18 white candles flickered beneath gray skies. As the pastor spoke, a soft rain began to fall. Nick stood at the back, fists clenched. He hated the word closure. The bus had not been found. The story was not over. Not for him. The years passed quietly in Windham County. By 1999, most spoke of the vanished bus only in hushed tones, a tragedy best left undisturbed. Nick West was no longer a restless boy. At 21, he worked construction in nearby Brattleboro. His parents had moved south, unable to bear the constant reminders, but Nick stayed. He lived alone in a small rented cabin near the edge of town, his days spent on job sites, his nights turning over the same questions in his mind. Occasionally, he would drive the route where Bus 47 had vanished, headlights sweeping over snow-dusted trees. One bitter January morning in 1999, a letter arrived from a lawyer in Montpelier. Nick's grandfather, whom he barely knew, had passed the previous autumn. In his will, the old man had left Nick a tract of forested land and a derelict farmstead deep within the Green Mountains. It meant little to Nick. The grandfather had been estranged from the family for years. Yet something about the location caught his eye. The property lay within a few miles of Route 16, close to the area where the bus had disappeared. By late spring, curiosity drew him there. The farm had long since fallen to ruin. A collapsed barn, a sagging farmhouse, weeds choking the narrow drive. The nearest neighbor lived miles away. Nick walked the land alone. The air was still, heavy, with the scent of pine and moss. Among the tangle of brambles behind the barn, he stumbled upon something odd, a low mound of earth, half covered by rusted sheet metal. Faint outlines suggested the remnants of an old root cellar or perhaps a storm shelter. Kneeling, he brushed away years of leaves and dirt. Beneath the debris lay a metal hatch nearly seamless with the ground. A cold unease prickled his skin. The latch resisted, groaning against years of neglect. But with effort, it yielded. A damp breath of air rose from the dark below. Nick peered into the void. A metal ladder descended into silence. He fetched a flashlight from his truck. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing concrete walls and a dirt-streaked floor. He climbed down. And in that forgotten underground room, what Nick West found would change everything. The ladder groaned softly beneath Nick's weight. As he descended, each rung slick with moisture. The air grew colder with every step. His flashlight beam quivered, tracing across the concrete walls. The chamber was no more than 15 feet wide. Rough cinder blocks lined the perimeter. Rusted shelving leaned against one wall, its contents long decayed. In the far corner, a coil of brittle rope lay in a heap, dust layered thick atop it. But it was what stood in the center of the room that stopped him cold. An old vehicle blackened, its paint scorched and peeling. The metal frame twisted, the roof partially caved. Yet beneath the soot and ruin, Nick recognized the unmistakable curve of a school bus roof. The number was barely legible, but it was there. 47. His breath caught. The interior of the bus had been strip trows of charred bench frames stretched toward the front. The steering wheel had melted to a warped ring. But amid the destruction, something else remained. On the inside wall of the bus, scrawled in childlike script, were words faint but still legible. Julia was here. January 1995. Nick's knees buckled. He knelt in the dirt, tracing the letters with shaking fingers. Julia, his sister. The date was over a year after the bus had disappeared. His mind reeled. The official search had ended in February, 1994. And yet somehow, the Busan the children had been hidden here alive, at least for a time. Gathering himself, Nick searched the chamber. He found scraps of cloth, fragments of torn notebooks, broken crayons scattered beneath the seats. No sign of bodies, just echoes of presence, long since faded. In a shallow recess behind the shelves, he unearthed a small box wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were cassette tapes, their labels worn. The topmost bore a date, March 1996. Nick's hands trembled as he lifted it. He did not have a player with him, not here. But he knew this was no accident. Someone had kept them here. Someone had covered the bus, sealed this place. Someone had tried to bury the truth. Climbing back into the pale light of day, Nick stood amid the overgrown farmyard. The wind stirred the trees, carrying with it a chill deeper than cold. He locked the hatch behind him and drove back to town in silence. The past was not buried. Not anymore. Nick's small cabin felt suffocating that night. He paced for hours, the cassette gripped tightly in his hand. His mind spun with questions he could not silence. Shortly before midnight, he retrieved an old tape player from a box beneath his bidon he hadn't touched since high school. With trembling fingers, he inserted the cassette and pressed play. Static filled the room. Then faint, distant child's voice. My name is Julia West. I am 12 years old. It is March, the 14th of March, 1996. Nick froze, breath caught in his throat. Julia's voice thin, but steady. We are underground. The man says we can't leave yet. He brings food once a day. Sometimes he is angry, sometimes not. We sleep on the seats. Claire is sick. Bobby keeps crying. A pause. Shuffling sounds. We mark the days on the wall now. I think it's been more than a year. Nick's vision blurred. Tears welled unbidden. I miss my mom. I miss Nick. If someone finds this, please tell them. We are here. The tape ended in static. Nick sat in the darkness, numb. His sister had been alive. A year after the town had stopped searching. Alive, trapped beneath an old farm not 5 miles from home. And someone with keys, with knowledge, had kept them hidden. The next morning, Nick drove to the Windham County Sheriff's Office. He placed the tape on the counter, voice low. You need to hear this. By afternoon, The station was in uproar. The old case files were reopened. Forensic teams dispatched to the farm. News spread quickly. Story long thought buried had stirred to life once more. Nick stood apart from the clamor. His heart was no lighter. The tape raised more questions than it answered. Where were the children now? Who was the man Julia spoke of? And why, after 5 years, had no one come forward? In the deep hours of that night, Nick played the tape once more. And as Julia's voice echoed softly through the room, he made a vow. I will find you, Julia. I will find the truth. The following days brought a flurry of activity to Windham County. Forensic teams descended upon the farm. The underground chamber was carefully documented, the charred bus frame photographed from every angle. Technicians collected the tapes, the scraps of cloth, the faint traces of writing on soot-stained walls. The sheriff, Malcolm Tate, held a press conference under a gray sky. His tone was measured, but the weight of what had been found was unmistakable. We now have evidence suggesting that Bus 47 was deliberately hidden. We have reopened the case in full. For the families, the news reopened old wounds. Some wept openly at the thought their children had survived beyond those first days. Others burned with fresh fury. Why had no one looked deeper? Nick remained at the edges of it all. He watched the reporters gather, their questions loud and eager. But this wasn't a story to him. It was his sister's voice, still echoing in his mind. Behind closed doors, the investigation accelerated. The tapes were digitized and enhanced. Julia's recording was authenticated. Forensic specialists confirmed that the writing on the bus wall had been made no earlier than late 1994. One fact became clear. The children had not perished in the snowstorm. They had been taken, held. But by whom? Attention turned to Harold Miles, the driver. His body had never been found. Had he been complicit? Had he fought back? Theories multiplied. Investigators traced ownership records of the farm. It had changed hands twice since 1990, both times under shell corporations with obscure ties. The name that surfaced again and again was that of Grayson Parksa, former maintenance worker for the county's school system. Parks had left the area in early 1995. A quiet man, no known family, no criminal record. But his file contained one curious note. In late 1993, he had purchased bulk construction materials, including concrete and steel. No permits had been filed for new building. The trail was thin but enough. A warrant was issued. But Parks was gone. His last known address, a cabin near the northern border, was abandoned. Mail piled at the door. The trail ran cold. And yet, questions remained. How had he moved a school bus unseen? How had he concealed it for so long? And above all, where were the children? In the midst of growing uncertainty, a second tape was discovered buried beneath debris in the underground room. Its label read simply, 1998. The sheriff called Nick personally. You should hear this. Nick sat alone in the dim conference room of the sheriff's office. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Across from him, a technician prepared the tape deck, hands steady despite the weight of what they might hear. The room fell silent as the tape began. More static, then breathing, shallow, uneven. A different voice this time. A boy. It's Bobby, the voice whispered. I don't know what day it is anymore. It's cold now. The man says we're moving soon. Nick gripped the arms of his chair. Claire is sick again. Julia says to stay strong. I don't want to be here anymore. A pause and then faint crying. If you find this, please tell my mom I love her. Tell her I tried to be brave. The tape ended. Nick sat motionless, knuckles white. Bobby Quinn, age 9 at the time of the disappearance. His mother had passed 2 years earlier, never knowing what had become of her son. The sheriff's voice broke the silence. This changes everything. They were alive, at least some of them, into 1998. Questions multiplied. Where had Parks taken them? Were any still alive? Deputies scoured records. seeking any trace of Parks' movements. Highway cameras, credit card transactions, property leases. Nothing surfaced. Thina, small breakthrough. An elderly hunter came forward. 5 years earlier, in late winter of 1999, he'd seen a green panel van moving along an abandoned forest road near the county linear road that hadn't been plowed in years. I thought it was odd. Man driving alone, van weighed down like it was carrying something heavy. No plates were recorded, no further sightings. But it was a thread. The sheriff ordered aerial sweeps of the surrounding forests. Remote cabins, old firewatch towers any place that might have served as a second hiding spot. Nick returned to the farm that night. He stood before the sealed hatch, the cold wind biting through his jacket. "I'm coming, Julia," he whispered. "I won't stop." Above him, the stars hung silent in a dark, indifferent sky. But somewhere, Nick believed, the truth still waited to be found. Days turned into weeks. The reopened investigation pressed forward, but leads remained scarce. Grayson Parks seemed to have vanished without a trace. His name triggered no alerts in DMV records, no flagged border crossings, no fingerprints in national databases, but the image of that green panel van lingered in Nick's mind. On a gray February morning, he drove out to the old forest road the hunter had mentioned. The snow was thin that year, the ground half frozen beneath brittle leaves. Nick parked his truck where the road disappeared into overgrowth and continued on foot. The trees pressed close, skeletal fingers against the pale sky. Each crunch of his boots echoed unnaturally loud in the stillness. He found remnants of old tire ruts faint, but visible beneath layers of debris. Someone had used this road, likely years ago. The path curved sharply, then opened onto a small clearing. There, half swallowed by the forest, stood the ruins of a cabin, its roof sagging, windows dark. Smoke stains marked the stone chimney. A collapsed shed leaned drunkenly against one side. Nick's breath caught. Could this have been a second holding site? Cautiously, he approached. Inside, the air smelled of mold and old ash. The floor sagged beneath warped boards. Rat droppings littered the corners. But near the cold hearth, he noticed something strange, a strip of faded fabric, pink and blue, wedged beneath a loose floorboard. With trembling fingers, he pried it free. A child's friendship bracelet frayed, stained with dirt. Nick's heart pounded. Julia had loved making such bracelets, but this one, its color pattern matched one he'd seen in her belongings as a child. He searched the cabin thoroughly. No bodies, no overt signs of recent habitation. But in the back room, etched faintly into the wall, were 4 sets of initials: JW, CM, BQ, HM, Julia West, Claire Morgan, Bobby Quinn, Harold Miles. Nick staggered back. Harold had been alive. Had he helped the children survive? Had he been a prisoner himself? The sheriff's team arrived by evening. The cabin was cordoned off, evidence cataloged. It was now certain. Parks had moved the children here at some point after 1996. But why had the trail stopped? Had they been moved again? Were any still alive? And what had happened to Parks himself? As the forest swallowed the fading light, Nick stood alone in the clearing, the bracelet cold in his hand. He would not stop searching. Not now. News of the cabin discovery reignited public interest. Reporters returned. Families gathered in the town hall once more, faces older but eyes still searching. The forensic team confirmed the bracelet had belonged to Julia. DNA traces matched samples her mother had provided years earlier. But the initials on the wall raised unsettling questions. Harold Milisa man once suspected, now revealed as another victim. His fate remained unknown. The sheriff's department deepened their search into Grayson Parks' past. They contacted former colleagues, old acquaintances. A portrait emerged, a quiet loner, methodical, with a history of obsession over control and routine. Then a break, An old utility worker, now retired, came forward. In 1995, he'd been called to inspect a remote power junction near the northern edge of the county. There, he had seen Parks alone installing what he claimed was a backup generator for a private client. He was nervous, the man recalled. Said it was for a hunting lodge, but the wiring was off, too heavy duty for a cabin. Records showed no permits for such a project. The coordinates matched a stretch of dense forest north of Windham County, a place few ventured. Sheriff Tate authorized an aerial survey. 2 days later, drone footage revealed something beneath the canopy. A small clearing, an outbuilding with a sheet metal roof. No visible road access. A ground team was assembled. Nick insisted on going. "I have to," he told Tate, "please." Reluctantly, the sheriff agreed. They moved in at dawn, a convoy of vehicles crunching over frost-hardened trails. The last mile was covered on foot. The clearing was eerily quiet. The metal roof structure stood intact, its door chained shut. Beside it, an old generator lay rusted. Inside, they found a single room. Concrete floor, iron hooks bolted to walls, matted bedding in one corner, a rusted cot, empty food tins. No sign of Parks, no sign of the children. But in a sealed box, beneath loose floorboards, they uncovered another cassette. Its label read, "Year 3. Nick's pulse thundered. Julia had survived at least that long. And now, perhaps, a new piece of the puzzle awaited. The conference room at the sheriff's office was silent once more. Nick sat with Sheriff Tate and 2 forensic techs as they prepared the newly recovered tape, Year 3. The player clicked, static, then breathing. A girl's voice, faint but clear. "My name is Julia West. I am 13 now. It is January, I think. Year 3. Nick gripped the table's edge. "We are in a new place. It is cold. No windows. The man says we must be quiet. We sing to stay calm. Claire and Bobby are here. Mr. Miles is sick." A pause. Shuffling sounds. "We mark the days in songs now. Claire remembers all the words. Bobby hums when he's scared. I keep this tape because someone must know we were here." Her voice wavered. "I miss my family. I miss Nick." Static again. Thina voice. Male. Muffled. Harsh. Quiet now. Lights out. A mechanical click. The tape ended. Nick sat in stunned silence. His sister's voice had aged stronger, but edged with exhaustion. Claire and Bobby had still been alive. Harold Miles had been with them. But the man Parks remained an ominous presence. Sheriff Tate leaned forward. She was alive into 1997, possibly early 1998. We know Parks relocated them at least once. Investigators scoured old property records, hunting leases, anything that might point to additional hideouts. The isolated generator install suggested Parks had prepared multiple fallback sites. A pattern emerged, each location more remote, more concealed. Then another clue. A trooper reviewing storage facility logs in northern Vermont flagged a unit rented under a false name. The signature matched a sample of Parks' handwriting. A search warrant was issued. Inside the unit, old clothing, boxes of canned good sand, a battered leather notebook. Its pages were cryptic lists of supplies, strange notations. But one entry stood out. "Move again soon. North, 3 left. HM not well. 3 left." Nick read the line again and again. Julia, Claire, Bobby, still alive. And then, "Move again soon." But where? Parks had been meticulous. His trail, once again, vanished. Yet the notebook offered one more lead. A map hand drawn, faint, incomplete, but marked with a circle deep within the Green Mountains, a place with no roads, no structures on public maps. Sheriff Tate studied it. "We'll search it, every inch." Nick nodded. "I'm going to." The search team mobilized at dawn. A helicopter survey narrowed the possible location to a narrow valley choked with dense pine. Nick rode with the ground team, Sheriff Tate, at the lead. The hike was brutal. Snow clung to the trees in heavy drifts. The sun barely pierced the thick canopy. Hours passed in tense silence, radios crackling intermittently. Then movement ahead. A scout called back softly. "We found something." They emerged into a narrow clearing. There, half buried beneath fallen branches, stood a crude structure logs, stacked haphazardly, tarp stretched over a slanted roof. No door, just a black opening yawning beneath the weight of years. Cautiously, the team approached. Inside, cold ash in a makeshift fire pit, rotten bedding, a rusted lantern, and along one wall scratched faintly into the wood floor, more sets of initials. JW, CM, BQ, HM. Nick's throat tightened. Another mark of survival, another piece of the story. But of the occupants, no sign. In a shallow pit behind the shelter, forensic teams uncovered bones. Animal remains. No human remains were present. But near the ashes, they found a torn scrap of cloth, a child's shirt sleeve and an old metal spoon, its handle engraved with a name, Claire. The discovery confirmed it. The children and Harold Milsh had been moved here. But for how long? An entry in Parks' notebook hinted at movement north. Beyond this site, no further marks appeared on the map. As night fell, the team retreated to base. Nick sat by the fire at camp, the spoon in his hand. They were close. He could feel it. "Hold on, Julia," he whispered into the dark. "I'm coming." News of the mountain shelter sent ripples through Windham County. For the first time in years, the search felt alive, real. Nick returned to town briefly, exhausted but unwilling to stop. Each discovery narrowed the circle, each mark on a wall, each scrap of fabric a quiet cry across the years. Sheriff Tate expanded the search perimeter, focusing on remote cabins and abandoned hunting leases further north. Old forest rangers were consulted. A handful of ancient trails were map paths, few used, some nearly erased by time. Thina knew lead. An anonymous tip arrived at the sheriff's office. A handwritten note, no return address. It read, "Try Crooked Creek Cabin. Last winter. Seen van. Kids inside." The handwriting was shaky, almost childlike. Crooked Creek lay beyond the last mapped trails-deep country, sparsely populated. Nick insisted on joining the new search. Tate agreed. "You've come this far," he said quietly. "We're finishing this together." The trek was long, snow deeper now with each step. The team moved cautiously, scanning the white expanse. By late afternoon, they reached the creek of frozen ribbon winding through a hollow. Across it, half collapsed beneath snow, stood a small hunting cabin. No tire tracks, no footprints. Inside, silence. But the walls told a different story. Near the hearth, carved deeply into the beam, "Year 4, we wait." Nick traced the words with numb fingers. A battered tin box lay in the ashes. Inside 3 Polaroid photographs, edges curled with age. The first showed a dark-haired girl, Claire, huddled beside a small fire. The second boy, Bobby, thinner now, eyes wide with fear. The third a girl, her face turned slightly away, but unmistakable. Julia, Nick's breath caught. They had been here. Recently. The photos were dated 1998. One more clue lay beneath Thema strip of paper, words scrawled hastily. He says, "Soon we go where no one will find us." The team fell into grim silence. Parks had moved them again. But where? Outside, the wind howled through skeletal trees. Nick stood beneath the fading sky, fists clenched. "I'm close, Julia," he whispered. "So close." The following week blurred into a grim cycle search. Return, search again. Winter deepened. Snowdrifts blocked many paths. Yet Sheriff Tate's team pressed on, driven by the mounting evidence that at least some of the children had survived into 1,998. The anonymous tip remained a mystery. No fingerprints on the note, no matches in local handwriting records. Could be someone who saw too much, Tate mused. Or someone who helped them. Nick agreed. The note's phrasing, "kids inside," suggested knowledge, maybe even guilt. Then, a break. An old forest guide came forward. He remembered a green van traveling north along Ash Hollow Trail in the winter of 1999. The van had been seen only once, caught briefly in the beam of a snowplow clearing the main road. It was loaded heavy, the man recalled, driver hunched low, heading for the old pines where no one goes. The pines. A stretch of ancient forest, dense and uncharted. Local legends spoke of abandoned war bunkers, forgotten ranger posts. The search shifted there. Drones scouted the area. One pass revealed a faint structure, a camouflaged shape beneath snow-laden branches. A ground team mobilized at once. Nick rode with them, heart racing. They reached the site by dusk. A bunker partially sunken, concrete reinforced. Its steel door chained shut. Bolt cutters hissed through frozen metal. Inside, cold air, heavy with dust. The room was small bare walls, iron hooks, old mattresses. No recent signs of life. But on the floor, beneath a pile of rotted blankets, lay another cassette. Its label, final tape. Nick's hands trembled as he held it. "This is it," he whispered. One more voice. The team exfiltrated fast. At the sheriff's office, the tape was prepared. Nick sat, breath shallow, as the recording began. Static. Then Julia's voice, older, weary. Year 5. I'm 15. We are fewer now. A pause. A soft sob. Claire is gone. Bobby is sick. Mr. Miles stopped talking days ago. Another pause. I don't know if we'll leave this place, but if someone finds this, please tell Nick. I never stopped believing. The tape clicked. Silence. Nick bowed his head, tears falling freely. Julia had been alive into 1,999. And now, at last, the shadows of the pines had given up one final piece of her voice. But questions remained. Where had Parks gone? Had anyone survived beyond this place? And who had sent that anonymous tip? The discovery of the final tape sent shockwaves through the investigation. Julia's voice older, frail confirmed what Nick and the families had long feared. The children had endured years of captivity, hidden deep within the unforgiving wilds. But the trail seemed once again to end in silence. Forensic sweeps of the bunker revealed no bodies, no recent DNA. The final traces of Parks and the children vanished sometime after 1999. The case teetered on the edge of cold once more. Then, another letter arrived. Addressed to Sheriff Tate, no return address. Insta-day, single photograph. A man-grizzled, thin eyes, sunken standing near a payphone in a Montana town dated 2004. Scrawled on the back. He watches still. A chilling caption. Facial recognition software confirmed the impossible. Grayson Parks. He was alive. The search expanded beyond Vermont. Federal agents joined the case. Parks had evaded detection for years, carefully altering identities, avoiding modern records. But why the photograph now? Who had sent it? Nick believed only one answer made sense. Julia, he whispered. Somehow she was still reaching out. A deeper analysis of the tape revealed faint background, sound strain whistles, distant industrial hums. An FBI analyst triangulated the likely source. An old freight yard region in eastern Montana, the town seen in the photo. A team was dispatched. Meanwhile, Nick prepared to follow. I have to go, he told Sheriff Tate. If there's a chance any chances, she's still out there. Tate placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we go together. As they boarded the plane westward, a strange calm settled over Nick. He had followed this trail through snow and shadow, through voices trapped on ancient tape. Now at last it was leading him forward. To her, Montana greeted them with cold winds and wide, empty roads. The freight yard lay abandoned, a rusting sprawl of forgotten industry. Agents scoured the area, searching for any trace of Parks or the children. No signs emerged. But local deputies reported a new lead. A recluse matching Parks's general description had been seen in the nearby Bitterroot Wilderness, trading supplies quietly in town before vanishing again into the trees. Old habits, old patterns. A search party was assembled. Helicopters swept the vast pine wilderness. Ground teams followed. Nick rode with Sheriff Tate into the hill smiles from any road, deep within an ancient forest. Thena signal. A scout team had spotted a cabin, isolated. Smoke from the chimney faint against the gray sky. They moved swiftly, caution thick in the air. The cabin stood crooked beneath towering pines. No vehicle outside, no paths worn. Inside, sparse. A stove, a cot, shelves lined with canned goods. And on the tablet tape recorder, fresh, functional. Beside Ida folded note, addressed simply, Nick. Nick's hand shook as he opened it. I heard you. I knew you'd come, but I can't stay. Too many shadows. I left this so you would know. I survived. Bobby did not. Mr. Miles is gone. Claire, she found freedom long before I could. I will always be watching, but now I must disappear. No signature, no date. But Nick knew. Julia, tears blurred his vision. He reached for the recorder, pressed play. A single message. Nick, it's me. I'm sorry I couldn't wait, but I had to go. I'm free now. Please, live your life for both of us. The tape clicked off. Silence filled the cabin. Outside, snow began to fall soft, endless. Sheriff Tate stood in the doorway. She survived, he said softly. Nick nodded. And that's enough. But deep inside, a single question remained. Where was she now? And would they ever meet again? The cabin in Montana was empty when they left. No trace of Parks, no new leads on Julia's current whereabouts. But the message was clear. She had survived. Back in Vermont, the investigation pressed on. Forensic teams pored over every clue from the mountain shelters and the Montana cabin. Old storage units were rechecked, cold leads re-examined. Then one final breakthrough. An abandoned storage locker outside Missoula, Montana, rented under a false name matching Parks' known aliases. Inside boxes of documents, faded Polaroids, and a small metal safe. When agents cracked it open, they found a single journal. Parks' writing disjointed, obsessive. The pages painted a chilling picture. Parks had suffered a breakdown years earlier, fixated on control, on isolation. The children had become his project, a twisted attempt to craft a world he could dominate. He'd moved them from place to place, punished, conditioned, rewarded. When one grew too sick, they were left behind. The final entries grew erratic. Can't hold them. Julia too strong. Claire gone. Bobby fading. Must move again. Watching me now. No place left. And one line, dated late 1999, left them. One remains. No choice. Agents also uncovered an old ID card Parks's and a coroner's report from 2005, filed quietly in Montana. Parks had been found dead exposure. No known next of kin. He was gone. The man who had stolen years from so many ended alone in the cold. For the families, the news brought mixed emotions. Relief, grief, but no true closure. Of the children, only Julia's voice remained, and a lingering question. Where had she gone? Nick returned home, exhausted, changed. At the old West family farm, he placed a new photo on the mantle. One of Julia as a child, bright-eyed, laughing. "Come home if you can," he whispered. "Or if not, know that I'll keep the light on." Outside, winter thawed into early spring, and though the snow melted from the hills, some shadows remained. But Nick had hope. For the first time in years, he had hope. Weeks passed. Windham County settled back into uneasy quiet. Reporters left. The sheriff team filed their final reports. The town spoke in softer tones now of the children, of the years lost. But beneath the surface, a new respect grew. A resolve not to forget. Nick tried to resume life. He returned to work, spent long evenings walking the old forest roads, sometimes stopping where the search had once been most desperate. And each night, before sleep, he played Julia's last message. "Live your life, for both of us." He wanted to honor those words. But the weight of questions lingered. Then on, a rain-slick morning in late April, an envelope arrived. No return address, no postmark. Instead, a single photograph. A woman, back turned, standing on a ridge above a valley. Long, dark hair braided down her back. On her wrist, a faded friendship bracelet, pink, blue. Below the photo, 6 words in neat handwriting. "I remember, I'm free, be well." Nick's breath caught. His heart pounded. It was her. Julia, alive, watching. He pressed the photo to his chest, tears falling freely. "You made it," he whispered. "You made it." And in that moment, beneath gray Vermont skies, a weight lifted. Not all wounds heal. Not all stories end cleanly. But some voices, once found, are never truly lost again. And across the hills, in the quiet of the pines, a single light flickered on, waiting. Summer came softly to Windham County that year. The snow retreated to the highest peaks. Streams ran full beneath bright skies. Yet for many, the thaw could not reach the places grief had frozen. Nick spent those months quietly. He spoke little to the press, declining interviews, turning away the curious. This was never a story for them, he'd said. It was hers, it was theirs. But he could not ignore what had been found, and what remained unfinished. At the edge of his family's farm stood an old red barn, long, unused. Nick cleared it by hand, swept out the dust, patched the roof. He hung a simple wooden sign above the door, "For the lost." Inside, he created a space, a quiet memorial. One wall held photographs of the missing children, framed in soft light. Julia, Claire, Bobby, the others. Beneath them, small shelves bearing mementos, toys, faded notes, the friendship bracelet found in the Montana cabin. And on a worn table near the back an old tape player, Nick placed the final tape inside, cued to Julia's last words. "Live your life, for both of us." Visitors came quietly, leaving flowers, candles. Parents stood in silence. Strangers traced the initials carved in the wood. It was not closure. Closure would never truly come. But it was a place to remember. And for Nick, a place to hope. Each evening, before locking the barn, he lit a single lantern in the window. "For you, Julia," he would whisper, "if you ever find your way home." And beneath the soft glow, in the still Vermont night, he waited. 3 years passed. Windham County settled back into its quiet rhythm. Seasons turned, fields blooming, rivers thawing, snows returning. But some absences were never erased. At the edge of the West family farm, the small memorial stood weathered now, but cared for. A place of memory, of quiet witness. Nick kept his promise. Each year, on the 12th of January, the day bus 47 had vanished, he placed fresh wildflowers beneath the children's photographs, lit the lantern in the window, and waited. Sometimes, others would come, parents, friends, strangers. They left offerings a ribbon, a note, a folded drawing. No one ever spoke. It was enough that they came. Then one clear autumn morning, a letter appeared. No stamp, no address. Folded simply, placed beneath the lantern. Inside a photograph. A cabin deep within a forest. Tall pines, their trunks silver in dawn light. Footprints in fresh snow, leading toward the door. And in the lower corner, a familiar mark, J.W. On the back 7 words, written in careful, steady script. I remember. I am safe, not alone. Nick read the words again and again, breath-catching. She was alive, still free, and not alone. He stood beneath the rising sun, the photograph pressed to his chest. For the first time in years, tears came not from grief, but from something else. Relief, hope. At the edge of the field, beneath the same old pines, Nick built a new lantern, postal, sturdy, meant to last. That night, he lit it for the first time. For you, Julia, he whispered to the dark, and for them all. And as the stars wheeled overhead, the light burned steady through the forest. A beacon for the lost. A promise kept, and perhaps someday a path home.